Now, there are many places you have visited in this country and there are places you haven't visited. Have you been to Cherangani?
Have I been to Cherangani? No, I have not.
You've heard of it?
I have.
The Cherangani Hills.
I've heard of them.
Do you know which county it is in?
Hold on. No. I should.
Somebody who was an MP for this area in the 90s is our guest. Okay? He was a member of parliament. In those days, when the opposition MPs, he was among those in the opposition. Then, when NAC formed government, he was in government. He was a minister in charge of food security, agriculture in this country, and so on and so forth. Nowadays, he's an elder. He sits, he looks, and he says, I see the sun rising from the east.
Oh, wow.
And by end of day today, it shall rain. And it rains. Kipruto, Arap, Kirwa, good morning.
Good morning to you, sir.
How are you doing?
Salama kabisa.
Good to have you here again.
Yeah, I thank God for it. Yes, and actually I was in the 80s, the 90s, and up to 2007.
You see?
I served for 20 years.
It's bugging me. It's bugging me and I don't want to Google.
My county is Transoia.
Kitale.
Yeah, Kitale. Is our district headquarters.
Well done. But what is the name of the county?
Transoia.
Very good.
Yeah.
He's a first land. She's a first land.
Very well. Very, very good. So, Transoia County, Cherangani Hills.
Yes.
Karibu sana here.
I thank God.
We want to talk about, you've been in politics for long. You served in parliament, you served in cabinet, you have sat at the executive, you have looked at this, in fact, you've even chaired and led a political party.
Yeah.
And that political party ended up being the ruling political party with you outside.
Yeah.
But now, you're looking at your former party,
Yes.
now as a ruling party,
Yes.
and we are seeing fractures at the very top.
That's true.
We'll discuss that.
Asante.
City has said hi to you, City Muga, but he's not
how
in
is
today.
he?
We don't know.
With the proverbs.
We told the guy, you go and rest, because he said, I want to go and rest. So the one thing that we're not doing is not disturbing him.
Oh, wonderful.
But he left us with the proverbs. And he told us for this week, the proverbs will be from Senegal.
Ah, Senegal.
So listen to the proverb and give us your interpretation. 3 kinds of people die poor. Those who divorce, those who incur debt, and those who move around too much. 3 kinds of people die poor. Those who divorce, those who incur debt, and those who move around too much, a.k.a. Tanga Tanga.
Eric, I don't know. I don't know whether I will have the right interpretation.
There is no wrong interpretation.
Okay.
Yes.
I think the hallmark of the statement is that you should be careful about what you do. Because at the end of the day, a divorce is not desirable, but at times it has to happen. I thank God I'm not in that category. I still got my wife for many years. And we incur debt almost every afternoon, whether it's Fulisa, Mshwari.
Something.
And the third one is Tanga Tanga. Of course, if you are aimless, you are not careful about what you're doing, then you will die poor. Yeah, you must be careful about what you're doing.
So it's like choices of consequences.
That's it.
And you should be prepared for the consequences.
For the consequences. Once you engage in a certain activity, you must be ready for the full hog. Yep.
In the previous hour, we had Senator Cherargei here, of course, you know that.
Yes, Senator Fonandi.
Fonandi.
Yes.
And one of the things that he said is what he's seeing now happening, he called it unfortunate, uncalled for, and used very many other words. People are just perambulating and speaking, and it has no weight. It's politics out there. There's a lot of work to be done. It's not being done. And this is with regards, of course, to the politics around, the president, the deputy president, members of the national executive and in the legislature from the ruling coalition, Kenya Kwanza, and their friends now who are in ODM. What do you make of what's happening in the country right now?
Well, I say political bad manners, because some of these things we saw it coming. Part of the reason why I left UDA is because I believed, I've done a bit of industrial psychology, the 2 characters, the president and the current deputy president, are people whose character cannot be compatible for such a long time. I remember I told the president and a battery of other guys who were around the president at that time, because we had 4 candidates. And Rigathi Gachagua was one of them. And I told them, you'll not last with him for 5 years. Because the two of them are too combative. And even in a family, I thank God you talked about divorce. In a family, it's not because we are good. Perhaps for my family, my wife is more tolerant than I am. And therefore, we've been managed to stay for almost close to 40 years together. In a family, there must be somebody who is more tolerant, somebody who is more understanding. So that when you have a hyper husband, the wife must be tolerant, very calm, and vice versa. That's how families survive. And of course, political conveniences that we have will, of necessity, mean one must be able to be tolerant. You remember the only person who has kept his vice or deputies well is Kibaki, because Kibaki was very tolerant. That's why the 3 vice presidents that he had, none of them complained much about Kibaki. And Kibaki respected the institution, even including us ministers. If other people, I remember there was a case of somebody, some ministers wanted to transfer coffee board from a ministry. So at the full length of time, he asked them, but where is the guy who is responsible for this particular ministry? I was called at 9 o'clock. The following day, I went to State House, and I did not have a problem. I told him, the only thing that we need to do is to amend the law. Then he said, why are we amending the law? If it is in this ministry, it's the same government. If it moves, we have better things to do rather than to take legislation to parliament to transfer a parastatal. That is Kibaki for you. But many people don't respect people they work with. Now, the 3 of you having been here for long, I give you a lot of credit, because people cannot tolerate each other. So that is our problem.
You saw this?
I saw this, and that is the reason I left.
Are you saying others did not see it?
I don't know. There could have been conveniences. Ama kuna madeni. I don't know. Because you see, I told them, yes, he can play another role because I respect him. I respect him, but I will advise him down the road about the way I see politics today. I saw that he was not going to last. That relationship was not going to last. Kindiki, Alice Wahome, or Muturi could have done better. That's my opinion, because they would be willing to listen to the boss. Because you see, Ruto is also a micromanager and too domineering. Rigathi is also combative. So when you combine the two, they tell us in industrial psychology, that is totally incompatible pair.
Usually, by the time somebody outside whatever little caucus or circle you are in is telling you something, usually you have an idea about that same truth.
Yes.
So the likelihood of both of those parties being aware of what could happen down the road is pretty high. Why would they still decide to make that decision if they knew there was a possibility that they could split ways down the road? Why?
I do not know. Possibly they were hoping. Because even the president you had in Kasarani, I didn't say that. He said himself that he's not going to treat his deputy the way he was treated. But perhaps it took more than 5 years for Uhuru to tolerate William Ruto. But this situation has become intolerable after 1 year. In fact, what we are seeing now is an epitome of what has been happening. Lack of political hygiene.
This political hygiene, if we were to define it, because we are talking about people, individual characters, and a job that needs to be done to serve the public. And the president has actually recently used this term, servant leadership. You are in this position to serve the people. You have been given the honor by the people of Kenya to serve them. So it's not about you. It's not even about your boss. It's not about your subordinate. It is about the people.
Yes.
So why would we end up having...
The problem, you see, there is what we call a habit. When it is repeated by the same individual, it becomes a character. And when there are more characters behaving the same way, it becomes a sort of a social challenge. And if there are more people in that kind of social arrangement, it becomes a subculture. And likewise, it will grow into a culture. So the culture that we've grown in Kenya for the last 60 years is that we do not respect the people who elect us. Immediately they elect you, you think you are the boss. You forget that they elected you because there were certain aspirations they had, certain hopes. And those hopes, you dash them by behaving in the opposite way from what they expected you to do. So that is become our culture. It is not just William Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua. If we don't watch, any other arrangement may almost precipitate the same. That's why we as ordinary citizens, we must rise to the occasion and say no. Yeah, no to impeachment, no to all these bad manners.
You know, the president, when he was deputy, you know, those days he was asked the question, what would you do to make sure that your deputy does not face the same kind of thing that you faced? And of course you've seen, you know, clips have emerged in an interview with Joe Ageo, him saying that can never happen. During the presidential debate, Yvonne Okoh and I asked him the same question. I mean, you're saying that you have gone through all these things, but you've been in office. Would you do the same? And he said, no, we wouldn't. What we fell short of is asking him what needs to happen to control a president so that a president does not mistreat a deputy president.
Go off the rails.
All right? So what is it? Do you think we need legislation? What do we need to do to infuse this thing that we are now calling political hygiene?
I think the most important thing is that we must think about our society itself, because I'm sure even today as we are here, the country is polarized. There are those who believe the deputy president is right, and there are those who believe the president is right, and therefore the deputy must, of necessity, be impeached. So it is become more of a culture. I ran the risk of repeating what I've said before, that upon taking over Tanganyika, Mwalimu Nyerere, 6 weeks later on, he resigned to tour the country, to inculcate in them the values of a nation, what it means to be a Tanganyikan. After 1 year, he came back and he became the president of Tanzania. He allowed Rashid Kawawa to take over for 1 year. And later on, he put in school curriculum to inculcate the values of being a Tanzanian. And that is how that country is. Today, they may be lower in terms of GDP than us. But because of that unity and good manners, they are likely to do better in the next 10 years. Because we are spending a lot of resources in fighting. Listening to the deputy president last week, I realized there is something that we are not seeing. The government is frustrating itself from performing, because there are certain activities he was given to do under gazette notice that the president himself signed. Later on, those activities were frustrated despite the fact that we spent billions of shillings in that particular department. That is something that is worrying me. Also, the last term of the two, Uhuru and Ruto, they wasted a lot of time in fighting. And in the process, they frustrated the public.
And the resources.
And the resources.
Because there was resources that were spent in the office of the deputy president, who was ineffective in delivering any job, getting any job done.
When we look at, I mean, coming from your position, you served in government, still, I mean, a political honcho even till now. And we still have to ask the question, really down the line, after several, years of administration of government, that there still cannot be a clear distinction between service delivery and politics. And I think I have to ask the question then, when people go into these positions, is it really for the good and the development and the progression of the country? Because if it is not from the get-go, there is no way you can ask somewhere down the line for somebody to please change their intent.
That's true.
If their intent from the very beginning was to see what they could garner for themselves or some kind of search for political expediency, there is no way we're going to ask, please change your proverbial political spots somehow in the middle of the game. So it seems as though we are dealing with quite a number of people whose intent was never for economic, developmental progression of Kenya.
We go back to the same society, because today, if you found me driving a Vitz, you will say this guy was a minister and is driving a Vitz, or if you found me in a taxi. Because our society has almost prescribed that once you get into a position of privilege, you must display certain level of acquisition that is beyond your capacity. But in other societies, people are proud of the legacy that you leave, and at times spend a bit of time listening to some of the stories emanating from Tanzania. They seem to respect people who served the country with distinction, as we seem to respect people whose term in office they were able to acquire something they are totally incapable of acquiring in another arrangement. This therefore means when somebody gets into politics, he's not getting to politics to serve. He's getting to politics to have primitive accumulation of wealth to the extent that at the end of the day, they are respected for doing so. Today, if you went to Rift Valley, and I can say this without any fear of contradiction, the backyard of President William Ruto, you can accuse him of Adani, G to G, any other accusation, but they will not take it. They say he knows.
Hii ni siasa unaleta.
Unaleta siasa na anajua kutafuta mali. Yeah. So you cannot accuse him of corruption. Accuse him of anything else, but not corruption.
So is it the people?
It's the people. We are the problem. We, the people, are the problem. We don't seem to see anything wrong when one of our own is doing the wrong thing, as long as we'll partake part of the loot that he has gotten from national coffers. Today, up to today, we are divorced, alienated from the government. We don't believe the government is part of our heritage. We still look the government as another animal, alienated from our own daily life. So if you are looting from the government, you are doing well. Because you are not stealing from us.
The recent demonstrations showed that the people actually know and they don't like what's happening. They acknowledge, they appreciate, they don't like. It was started, yes, by the younger generation, but it got widespread support.
Yes.
It says that people were expressing themselves and saying, you know what, we have just been tolerating. We have been sitting back and tolerating and hoping that, you know what, you guys will change. We've been giving you these signals once in a while. You go into parliament, we vote you out, we bring in somebody else because we are thinking you are behaving the other way. And now this one voice was saying, enough is enough. They were saying this opulence that you're showing, no. They were saying this, wanton theft of public resources or misappropriation of public resources and a lack of service delivery, no. If you look at even the conversations that are continuing now, a raised level of accountability, people are saying no. So people are aware.
People are aware, but we have not sufficiently owned the process. Yeah. We are still almost like, what do I say, passive participants. Some of the people in this country. The GNCs, and I hope when they get to time that they get into certain offices, and I pray sooner than later, they will be able to keep up with what they did for the last, on the 25th of June.
Yes.
And thereabout. Because it was a departure from the past. It was non-tribal, non-class. They didn't have that we come from this place, we come from Kayole, we come from Karen, we come from Runda. For them, it was that this is enough.
Kimani Ichung'wah was so class.
Yeah?
Kimani Ichung'wah was so class. He used to see from there, KFC.
Kimani Ichung'wah sees things I don't see. Possibly smarter than me.
All right, go on. On a light note. Yeah. So they came out and they were united. They were representing a cross-section of Kenyan society.
That's true. Yes. And they're also representing, the Kenyan society. They didn't see tribe. They saw themselves as Kenyans who deserve better than what the government is giving them. Yeah. And that should be the way. We hope it will actually be ingrained in our blood, so that we say no, no, no. Because you see, like what we talk about, private-public participation, the whole problem is lack of management. Yeah. If you are to improve management of public resources, there are enough people to buy into this, and you can sell whatever you want to sell to the public, as long as they trust that the management is right. How
do people, and I think we continue to ask this question because we come from a place where it's obvious that there has to be citizen-centric governance. And even if you're not the ones, putting your signature, that it has to be with the citizen in mind that these decisions or these actions are taken and made. But how do people, we do, like you said, you have some citizens who are very, very, plugged in. People will work in their community. People will take matters to court. People will look for judgments in areas of jurisdiction that they see things are going wrong. People will. But it would seem as though the majority of people, we just kind of sit back and hope that things will get better. And we talk and we complain and we say that things don't work right. But how do we actually get involved? And I'm going to come back to your example. When you were as a minister, did you expect that Kenyans would speak up and say, no, we cannot go in this direction? Or was the general thinking that, okay, they'll make noise for a few days, but then after that, they'll keep quiet?
Yeah, at times when you're inside, you don't know what is happening outside. Sincerely, when we are at the ministry, perhaps at times you have a lot of information and you think you are doing well, only for the public to say no. And of course, I had a share of my own failures and successes. So as a minister, yes, at times you think the public is wrong, but in the overall, you realize the public was right. Because at times there is disinformation, at times there is propaganda, and at times there is some lack of information. And of course, it is your duty, if you are a minister and people don't know exactly what you are doing, it is your duty to tell them exactly what is happening and why certain things are happening in that particular manner. But yes, the president admitted that there was a lack of effective communication, but it was not just lack of effective communication. Corruption is there, and he admits there is corruption in government. Of course, display of opulence, lagis, and a bit of a measure of arrogance was very evident. And I thank God the Gen Zs actually were able to teach them how to behave. Some of them actually were no longer flying the flags before they were sacked, because they realized the country was at crossroads, and it was the country was outraged by their behavior. But what I still believe is lacking is a clear demonstration. When you talk of public participation, we need to redefine public participation in a way that the public is actually engaged in a more meaningful way than is the case today. This is a constitutional requirement that was not there during our tenure. But this constitutional requirement does not seem to be respected the way it ought to be respected, including some of the issues that are around the table. Yeah.
Why do you think it's not being respected? Do you think it's the status quo resisting change?
It is actually from the system itself. And with the risk of looking like some bitterness with the president, he is the person responsible. In what we call change behavior, or behavioral change, it translates better when it starts from the top. When the top is right, the rest of it will realign itself with the top. Yeah, and that's why during Kibaki 1, people arrested policemen for almost soliciting for a bribe.
Yeah.
Because they knew Kibaki was no nonsense person. But the current situation is that if you are not gifted in going around the corners and getting what does not belong to you from the public coffers, then you are not respected. You remember 15 cases that were dropped just because there was a new regime, as if those cases were sort of engineered politically from the previous regime. What happened to those cases? They were all dropped.
Yeah, we were told they had been engineered.
Politically engineered in the first place, and that's why they
then you take somebody to KRA who had a case with KRA of 17 billion. I don't know.
This constitution has given us very many things, good things. Some of them people argue bad things. It's still, the jury is still out there. It has given us 2 deputy presidents so far. Both of them have gone through the same kind of treatment. It has given us deputy governors, and we have seen what's happened to the deputy governors.
Yeah, there are a number of things that some thoughts have engaged in terms of the issues of deputy. One of the suggestions is that, of course, the deputy should also have substantial position, just the way you used to have, let's say, you could have a vice president and minister for finance, for Saitoti and the late Kibaki. They occupy that position. I was also thinking deputy governors in various jurisdictions should also be given substantive office, because otherwise they run the risk of looking like they are the peers to the governor. But another addition is for us to tinker around with the constitution to provide for possibility that if I'm running for deputy president and I happen to win with my president, and I intend to run, there should be a haters period that upon like 2022, the current pair took office, and if Rigathi Gachagua wants to run, he should opt out of 2007 as a presidential, as a deputy.
2027.
2027.
This next election, after one term.
Yeah.
After one term, or if you serve the full term, 2032, you should wait up to 2037. For me, it will give us a chance where the president's legacy is not confused by the ambition of his deputy. I think that was the main problem between Uhuru and Ruto.
But this is the issue, though.
Yes.
They campaign together.
Yes.
That means they own the legacy that they want to build.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So by the end of a term, they should basically, throughout the term, they should be working together.
Yes.
To deliver on this dream that they sold to the people. And they should deliver on achieving and realizing this legacy. So one continuing into another would be okay, because it means that the people are saying, yes, you served for those 5 years, we are giving you another 5 years to continue, and we are happy with what you've done. After 10 years, Mr. President, go, your deputy can continue for another.
Well,
if they behaved well.
Yes,
but
if they behaved well, but you realize we are not behaving well. So I think there should be a break. So that also for deputy governors and governors, likewise, because there is no single deputy governor today, perhaps in 1 or 2 counties, who is happy. They are complaining about their governor. Either we need to look at the character of the 2 individuals running in the same ticket. Because at the end of the day, we are wasting a lot of time and public resources by the infighting within government. Today, I'm sure the deputy president cannot call any officer of government to request certain things to be done because of the hostility between him and his boss. That is worrying me. Because this role now is that we are paying him a salary without allowing him to work.
Does it, because that's where it does strike me, and I mean, at the risk of sounding offensive, it just appears to me that there's a bit of almost immature politics being played out here. That such a thing would have to happen, that if you then require certain mechanics to have your office running because of what could be frosty relations between yourself and your superior, then the mechanics for your office would not be supplied. Or that we see certain things that need to happen and they don't happen because this frosty political relationship is happening. To me, it strikes me as a bit of immature politics. We should be able to have your thing, then go out and duke it out at the ballot box, but get things done for the nation. Why can't we see that can happen? Why? Because you don't have to be friends at the office, but you can get things done, and then you can sort out your issues later.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you fully, but we are yet to reach that particular stage. Even democracy in Kenya, for example, has not really matured. Because even in all these political parties, they're either fashioned around an individual or around a collection of communities who have come together for the fear of the other communities. We are yet to have serious democratic institutions and structures that allow people to make decisions. We call the delegates conference in all political parties is supposed to be the supreme organ. But here in Kenya, they have to listen what is the leader saying for us to realign ourselves. ODM of yesterday is different from ODM of today because Raila has decided to work with William Ruto. And therefore, it has become a new, they are realigning themselves. You realize Orengo was almost suffering a backlash from the rest of the membership when he said he was hesitant to want to get into an arrangement with Kenya Kwanza. So it's still, as a student of politics, I still believe we are yet to be fully democratic. We are yet to respect institutions. The democracy that we talk about is a democracy in books, but in practice we don't do anything closer to what ideal democracy does provide.
Do we understand democracy?
We seem to understand theoretically, but we don't seem to have owned it. We don't own it because it is like it is an alien body that has visited Africa. It is not Kenya alone. It is in almost all countries. My little study that I did in one of the papers indicates that there are only 2 political parties that are worth the name. CCM in Tanzania, and again ANC in South Africa, although it is now been visited with a lot of challenges. And there is also some semblance of democracy in Botswana. But in Botswana, it is slightly different because it is like a collection of chiefs from various ethnic conclaves that come together to create that kind of consensus around the country.
Maybe that's our democracy.
Yeah, possibly that may be the...
Maybe that's what we've been practicing, but in a different way. Because just like you've explained,
yes,
if you look at it, it is, regional kingpins. We use those terms loosely, but they mean a lot. Regional kingpins representing, regions, tribes, right? And even with the BBI, there was an attempt then to say, let's bring in the regional kingpins and put them all together in the executive so we can share. We can have one president, deputy president, prime minister, 2 deputy prime ministers, and then you can have, leader of majority, leader of you can have an opposition. So we can bring all those guys into somewhere where they are sitting at a table. Maybe that is our democracy.
Well, that is, but then we need to do it, put it in the books. Otherwise, the democracy that we describe in 2010 Constitution is different from that kind of arrangement that I'm suggesting does happen in Botswana. Yeah, but nonetheless...
Does it work in Botswana?
It works. It has worked, but at times there's been some short-changing of individuals in the sense that the deputy president at that time faked illness, that he was going to die in office because he had some cancer. Only for him to be given some temporary relief by the president with the hope that when he dies, the issue will be sorted out. Only for him to take over. And when he took over, the president ran away from the country. So we still got enough challenges in Africa about tolerating each other. We don't seem to tolerate each other.
We don't seem to know what we want as well as a country. Or maybe we do, but it's just we just haven't
gotten round to saying, saying this is it exactly, this is how we're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
Because I am a proponent for being able to, form and forge your own way of doing things. Because the truth of the matter is that a democracy is a handed down system. It's a handed down system of the democracy as it's prescribed by particular states is a handed down system of doing things that it's just assumed that, okay, well, we've left you to your independence. How about you take this on and that's how you should form? Or because some of the greatest quote unquote nations of the world have adopted this particular kind of governance, then we say, okay, well, let's apply it to ourselves without looking at the very tenets or elements that are existent within, the boundaries of a sovereign state. Is it not possible to say, okay, forward thinking, clear thinking, you can actually form and forge your own way?
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you in the sense that we need to do when you say that, some people think you are suggesting amendment of the Constitution. Far from it. We need to do an audit of the current Constitution. The things that we feel are okay, we retain them. The things that we feel we could do better, including the arrangement at the top. Because you see, what we did in 2010, we traveled through the world. We wanted Westminster system. When we reached Naivasha, We went the American system, but not quite the American system. So we may need to look at the current constitution, perhaps look at the recommendations that were sent to Parliament the other day, where we are able to disperse power from the presidency. Because the idea of 2010 constitution was to reduce power from the center, so that all parts of the country have some little power. But you see, what we did was almost to take it raw, give it to the governor, who becomes like a president of a county and behaves worse than the president, because systems were not even put properly. But thank God, at least the public is getting more and more aware. So my thinking would be, let us do an audit of the current constitution, see which things are okay, which things can we do better, including the issue of CDF. Even if I was a member of parliament, I used the CDF for the 4 years that I served, the last 4 years of my service, starting with 6 million all the way now, it is 165. But at times, the way it has taken shape is that the MP is becoming a mini president of a constituency.
Yep.
So some of those issues, let us have resources ring-fenced for a certain constituency, all the 290 constituencies, but it should not be the decision of the MP. It should be the decision of a committee removed from the MP, so that the MP is just one of the constituents making those particular decisions. That is one way. Also, at the top, we must rethink, how do we make sure that no part of the country feels out of government? Because you could see, you bring five people from ODM, and almost the ODM nation believes they are now in government. So they were crying for only 5 ministers, and yet the president has been visiting the constituency that is akin to, let's say, the center of epicenter of ODM. Even before he did that, but it was not enough until Raila donated the 5 experts that that he gave to government.
And now they are happy.
They seem to be happy, and they are almost becoming gatekeepers worse than those who were previously in Kenya Kwanza. But on a more serious note, I think we still need to relook at this constitution and also assist ourselves to realize that when you are elected a president, you are not our chief. You are just one of us doing a job that you are given for the period of 5 years, and if you are given another mandate, 10 years, and you go.
That's it.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Ruto, in as far as we need to relook at our constitution.
Yeah.
But I have a different thought beyond that.
Yeah.
Beyond that is to relook at our constitution and take ourselves back into 2010, into the journey towards 2010, when we were seeking to give ourselves a new constitution. What were we after? We were after a government that serves us, a government that we feel is serving us, a government that we feel has all the systems and checks and balances. So what did we do? We created a government that had various institutions, and we said we are stopping to personalize government and to institutionalize government. And that's why we created commissions, independent offices, 3 arms of government, and we clearly separated their roles and dictated that, and also said the role of the citizen in making sure that every decision of government has to start with the approval of the citizen, right? So I agree we need to relook and see, so which of these things is working, which of the institutions is not working, and why are they not working, and make them work. Because I have a sense that it is after we gave ourselves a constitution and went back, we gave the dog to look after the meat. And told the dog, now we have tumekatakata hii nyama, tumeweka vitunguu, nitumbukiza, tumeweka hata viazi kubwa kubwa, cabbage mzima, sukuma, spinach mzima, huko ndani, sasa wewe umbwa, guard this meat and tell me when the meat is ready.
You're waiting my appetite too.
Yeah. And you know what happened to the dog with that meat? Yeah. Maybe that we expected that system would immediately embrace this constitution that is dismantling it and allow us to move. And the system is now telling us, let's revise. You see, it's not working. What fanya hivi, instead of boiling this meat, in a pot and there's a flame, remove it from the flame, weka hapa chini. It is easier for me to look at it and to make sure that nobody opens. And the dog is basically saying, remove the meat from the fire, put it where I can reach it so I can eat it better. And I'm saying, we should ask ourselves, if the dog is the problem, we remove the dog.
The dog.
Yeah, there lies the answer. Actually, remember that small book written by Chinua Achebe. Initially, it was the trouble with Nigeria. Now it is the image of Africa. In one of the chapters, he said there is no problem with Africa. It's not about the people. It's not about the resources. It's not about the weather. It's not about all these other things. The problem lies squarely with lack of effective leadership. Because let's remember that the same constitution promulgated 2010, Kibaki had led the country for more than 8 years under the old constitution, the same constitution that put us in a lot of trouble. But he was able to do a number of things, to open airwaves, to open space in terms of freedom of expression and many things. So at times it may not be even the constitution, it may be the problem is lack of effective leadership. That is where our problem is.
What do you think, Do?
I know, because if we're saying lack of effective leadership, because if you apply the same principle in another nation, if you had ineffective leadership in another nation, we would see the crumbling of, processes or progress the same way that you do in other places. So if that is the one element that is needed to have this happen, are we then saying that if you had effective leadership across board, at whatever, at the minutest level, that we would see that governance then would be at the very least efficient?
Yeah, let's go back to the same country, Nigeria. When the late Murtala Muhammad took over government, they knew that he was no nonsense man. And within 24 hours, every officer was on a desk or his desk at 7 o'clock in the morning because they knew. So it takes the top to realign the issues downwards. If the leadership at the top is not effective and is seen to be partaking in certain things that are forbidden, everybody will copy. And people either cope with situations or copy situations and perfected themselves. Because, like, I come from a maize-growing county, that's Trans Nzoia. If the mother steals from the granary and the children see the maize stolen, instead of going to posho mill, they sell it in between. Those children will be thieves, and they will not see anything wrong with stealing maize from the granary.
But if she does it right, essentially what we are saying is that they will follow her.
They will follow her
if she's doing the right thing.
The right thing.
Yeah.
So leadership is the main problem, whether at the county leadership, and also it behoves Kenyans to make decisions in the next election, who they elect as governor, who they elect as president, and many other positions. So that at the end of the day, we may be blaming the people that are leading us, but it is we who put them in those particular offices because we believed they were behaving like us, which means there is something also inherent in us that we are not as straight as we profess.
Some people have said, Kipruto, as we conclude, that looking at the Gen Z protests and what they brought to the fore, and even the president acknowledged it in New York the other day and said, you know what, Kenyans have placed a very, very high bar for me. They want excellence. When I do very good, they tell me, we didn't elect you to do very good. We want you to do excellent. And so that bar is too high. But the thing is, he understood a bit of what Kenyans were saying, which is we want a government that serves us. We want a government that responds to our needs, right? After the handshake of the broad-based government and the donation of some few opposition leaders into government, we seem to have gone back into status quo. The politics that was being played out in this country in January, February, March, April is the politics that's being played out in this country in September. It's like June, July never happened to the political class.
Yeah, you know, our current leader, President William Ruto, has good memory for bad things and bad memory for good things.
What does that mean?
It means he knows the right thing to be done, but he forgets sooner than later. Number two, he makes certain statements that he does not believe in. That's why the same GNCs, displayed 1,000 lies he has made since he took over office. And you yourself, you asked him, why does he like lying? I don't think he gave you a good answer. Yeah. So at times he says it for the convenience of the audience, but he does not believe in some of those things. I've known him
what
since
do you
the days he
think
left
will now
university.
happen?
Yeah?
What do you think will now happen? What do you think will happen next? Because, yeah, the political class has grouped and they're moving on like, business as usual. What do you think is happening in Kenya right now?
There are two constituencies that are very important, in my opinion. The Mount Kenya bloc and the GNCs. Those are the two constituencies that will determine then the kind of leadership that we'll have in the next election. I have a strong feeling that if William was to win, it's not because of his popularity. It is because of the disorganization of the opposition. Otherwise, anybody can beat William. I can tell you. I know him, and I know I've been around for quite some time. I may not be a very serious politician, but I read politics every day. I sleep politics. I wake up politics. And I know the next election will be determined around the mountain and in that constituency called GNC. People say there could be 8 million, but for me, I put it between 5 and 8. They will determine who becomes the next leader. It's only that perhaps they themselves have not clearly realized who the leaders are that are already on this political space.
You've said it. Kipruto Arap Kirwa, Mzee, elder, former minister, former MP, has been our guest for this hour. Thank you for joining us. We'll invite you again.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Asante sana.
Thank you.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your